Tariffs are a hallmark of former President Donald Trump's economic agenda, and some of them have picked up bipartisan support as a way of dealing with China. But there are still key differences between Trump and Vice President Harris when it comes to how large and wide-ranging they should be. As economics correspondent Paul Salmon reports, the potential impact of imposing more tariffs was debated on stage last night and is very much on the minds of some voters in battleground states.
Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world.
Last night, former President Trump began by defending his aggressive tariff policies, both from his first term and what he would do if he wins again. That includes a 10 to 20% tariff on all foreign goods and a 60% tariff, that is, import tax, on goods from China. It was the very first policy spat in last night's debate.
My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month.
To which Trump responded, in part,
the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money.
Almost anyone would dispute that explanation. But one thing is true. The Biden administration maintained most of the tariffs on more than $300 billion worth of goods from the original Trump regime and added tariffs on another $18 billion worth of items from steel to medical supplies, including a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles.
We are fighting for middle-class families.
And Vice President Harris supports tariffs too, she said, so long as they're much smaller and targeted. You'll hear more about that in a bit. What's so striking is that protective tariffs were once a partisan point of stark conflict. But now both candidates are in favor of tariffs, which of course have such obvious appeal to workers afraid of losing their jobs. Many of them swing state voters in import-threatened industries. Look, the best-selling BYD Chinese EV goes for $16,000 or less in China. They're not yet sold here, but even with Biden's 100% tariff, they'd still be a bargain. And despite a plunge in Chinese consumer demand, manufacturing activity across all sectors remained strong until just recently, resulting in a glut of Chinese goods being offered on websites like Temu at unbelievably low prices. I bought this cap with a watercolor by Swiss artist Paul Klee for $25 from a U.S. firm some time ago. This one from China for grandson Will, $1.69, free shipping. Small wonder that at a Detroit Teamsters Union local, there was plenty of support for protective tariffs.
Short-term discomfort for long-term relief.
I think it's a good thing. One way to ensure that jobs are going to be at least starting back here in the United States. Good paying jobs. Jobs that they outsourced overseas. Maybe it's not something that's going to happen immediately, but over time, it's probably something I think is going to be very effective at bringing jobs back to our country.
But there were tariff skeptics as well.
I would say it probably wouldn't happen right away, so I might not benefit from it.
Professor Kim Clausing worked for the Biden administration, has studied the impact of past and would-be future tariffs as an academic.
Our trading partners may retaliate against our tariffs with tariffs of their own, which hurts our export sectors.
So when the Trump administration slapped tariffs on imports from multiple countries, including China, it did spur some domestic production and manufacturing. Trump's team also cites a rise in median household income during that period, before the pandemic hit, as evidence of success. But overall, says economist Clausing,
when you take a hard look at the data, they really aren't worth it for jobs, and they raise costs for consumers.
How much would Trump's latest proposal cost per year?
That comes out for a median family in the middle of the income distribution to be about $1,700.
So how do the workers like them apples?
$1,700 isn't going to kill me. That's all there is to it. And if it's enough to bring jobs back here, I'm willing.
Dan Hammond is a Democrat. So is Jared Jackson.
Some things do take time. And if that were to work, I don't know what other repercussions would come from that and stuff. And I'm all for it.
But Clausing says the $1,700 or so will mainly and really hurt low-income households.
What's really driving the fact that tariffs hit lower and middle income people harder than they hit those that are well off is the fact that low and middle income people are going to the store and spending most of their money every week and every month.
Moreover, she says $1,700 is a low estimate.
This is really an underestimate because it's just looking at the fact that when imported prices go up, consumers take that hit. But imagine you're going to buy something like a bottle of wine. Well, the French wine and the Spanish wine are more expensive, and that gives the Californian wine growers the opportunity to raise their prices too.
In fact, Kamala Harris argued last night the impact of Trump's tariffs could be even larger, as much as $4,000 per household per year. But are we to do nothing about the tsunami of cheap Chinese imports? Trump economic advisor and former U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer has written that we have to take action. Quote, in circumstances where the exporting country's trade distortions are systemic, broad tariffs may be the only way to offset them and reinstate market forces. Well, not broad tariffs, says economist Clausing.
I think you can reach those industries and those trade practices that you think are unfair with much more targeted, careful, and strategic tariffs. But I don't think there's any reason or any argument to have such broad-based, across-the-board tariffs.
And that's what the Democrats are proposing, says Clausing.
I don't think that means you want to completely unilaterally disagree to never have a tariff, because as our trading partners in Europe and elsewhere realize, it's important to have tools at your disposal when other countries are doing unfair trade practices.
Tax expert Jim Hines says there's a basic problem with all tariffs, though, that most people never think about.
If you put on a tariff, it increases the value of the dollar, and that makes it harder to export.
Why does the value of the dollar go up if you impose tariffs?
One way to think about it is we have less demand for foreign currency now.
Now, stick with us here. That's because we need to buy foreign currency in order to buy foreign goods. We buy that currency with dollars. But if we buy fewer foreign goods...
We're not buying foreign currency, and so the dollar gets stronger relative to the foreign currencies.
As an inevitable result, dollar-priced American goods become more expensive, and thus American exports will go down.
It's a tough argument, but it's true.
Moreover, says Clausing,
even in those heartland regions where you would expect people to be pro-tariff, the job losses from the retaliation and the shocks were higher than the job gains due to the protection from the tariffs.
But let's face it, these are tough arguments, as is the argument for free trade in general. In the short run, workers feel threatened by foreign competition. Or as Trump enthusiast Brian Panabaker says,
I want to have a job, and that's what I think what President Trump is going for, is protecting American jobs.
Does Jim Hines not sympathize?
Your heart goes out to people who lose their jobs because of competition from foreign imports. It absolutely does. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be, assistance for those people and those industries and those communities. I think there should be. But if the question is, should we adopt bad economic policies, thinking that by doing so, we're helping American workers, that's just confusion.
For the PBS NewsHour, Paul Salman in and around Detroit.